Hello! I will be throwing a curveball at you today. We're going into soul and R&B territory with undoubtedly my favorite soul and R&B artist, Curtis Mayfield. So before we get started, this record I found on an army base. For all you record collectors out there, being around an army base is a great place to find strange rarities from around the world. Because these people, they're stationed somewhere, they buy stuff, they come home, they pawn it off, and next thing you know, you have a bunch of you can get yourself a bunch of stuff from Asia, Germany, probably not the Middle East so much, but wherever a lot of soldiers are stationed and imperializing. So this record here, Curtis Mayfield's Superfly, undoubtedly his most popular record. It's a soundtrack to the film Superfly. This was pressed in Seoul, Korea. Pardon the pun, Seoul. And I can't tell if this was just stuck in a window for years on end, and the sunlight hit it, and it's now all you see is the cyanotype or the cyan that's left on it, or if it was just cheaply made, and the cyan ink is the only thing that they used to recreate this record, which is probably more. I tend to believe that more in this case. I tend to believe that more because Korea. This like I said, this was pressed in Korea, and in the '70s they didn't put a whole lot of money into packaging records in Korea. So and when I say that, it's there's the record. It's on Asia Records. So that being said, I mean, even the cover itself, it's real flimsy, almost like paper, and there's no insert. So whoever had originally owned this was probably stationed in Korea, and probably during the Vietnam War is when most American soldiers were stationed in Korea, and they probably bought this at some record store, and so I couldn't pass it up. I'm like, oh man, look at this. It's Curtis Mayfield, my favorite soul artist, and it's a Korean pressing. Usually, when it comes to the Asian countries, it's Japan is where you're going to get most of your material, most of your records out of. So Curtis Mayfield, I think there's a generational thing going on because my generation and probably the generation before me, when it comes to soul music, we tend to go for Curtis. We go for probably Isaac Hayes, more so than Marvin Gaye, Al Green. Like my parents' generation were probably more Marvin Gaye. I love Marvin Gaye. Don't get me wrong. What's Going On is one of the best records ever made. But the reason I say that is because in the last 20 years or so, I mean, if you watch movies, chances are there's a Curtis Mayfield song somewhere in that movie. I mean, there's a ton of Curtis Mayfield songs in movies now. Not like it was in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. So Curtis Mayfield, he gets his start in, I would say, late 50s, early 60s with a band called The Impressions. He was always very politically and socially motivated with his lyrical content. You had the civil rights movement going on, so he breaks away from the Impressions and starts doing this very socially motivated music. Most of it was about inner city life, drug abuse, domestic violence, civil rights. And he carried that tradition on with his lyrical content all the way up to his death in 1999, I believe. And he was pretty young when he died. He was only in his late 50s. But I remember, here's something a lot of people don't remember about Curtis, is that in the early 90s, and I can't remember how the story goes, but I don't know if like a lighting equipment or a spotlight fell on him and he became paralyzed, or if he was actually struck by lightning. I can't remember. Maybe you guys can clarify that for me. I should have done some research. But he actually became paralyzed, and he ended up putting out one more album after that. Once he got a little bit better, of course he couldn't tour or move. Called New World Order. And New World Order is an amazing record, and it's probably one of his least known records. Mostly because people weren't really listening to this style of music in the 90s. And it's kind of frightening because some of the stuff that he's saying in that record is coming to fruition today, as well as some stuff that we haven't seen yet. But he would end up dying, passing away in '99 from I believe diabetes. So, again, Curtis Mayfield, Superfly. I know you all want to hear the song Superfly, but that's not the best song on this record. The best song on this record is a song called Pusher Man, and that's what we're going to listen to today. So sit back, enjoy, light one up. Let's see what's going on here. Well, I got that one.
Some coke, have some weed. You know me, I'm your friend, your main boy, thick and thin. I'm your pusher man. I'm your pusher man. Ain't I clean, bad machine, super cool, super mean, feeling good for the man, Superfly, here I stand, secret stash, heavy bread, baddest bitches in the bed. I'm your pusher man. I'm your pusher man. I'm your pusher man. Silent life, crime. getting mellow now. Pusher man getting mellow, y'all. Happy mind, happy side, making money all the time. Miami and just me for all junkies to see. Ghetto Prince is my thing, making love's how I swing. I'm your pusher man. I'm your pusher man. Two bags, please, for a generous fee. Make the world what you want it to be. Got a woman I love desperately. Wanna give her something better than me. Been told I could be nothing else. Just a hustler in spite of myself. I know I can make it this life just to make it. Lord, Lord, yeah. Got to get mellow now. Gotta be mellow, Lord. Got to get mellow now. I'm your mama, I'm your daddy, I'm that nigga in the alley. I'm your doctor when in need, want some coke, have some weed. You know me, I'm your friend, your main boy, thick and thin. I'm your pusher man. I'm your pusher man. I'm your pusher man. Pusher man.
So there you go. The Pusher Man by Curtis Mayfield. I forgot about the language in that song. I doubt that one's gonna fly. But again, Curtis Mayfield, Superfly, great record. I can listen to this every other day probably. So have a good Wednesday, everybody. Stay safe. Keep rocking. And don't forget to recycle. Love you.